Hi, today we're going to look at simplifying fractions, but before we do, we're going to have a look at equivalent fractions. So if we look at the diagram on the board, at the top we have two fractions with pink shading. The one on the left, you can see 2 out of 6 of the squares are shaded. The one on the right, if we look at the bolded lines, we have one segment is shaded out of 3 total segments with the bold outlines. Now in both diagrams you can see the equivalent amount of area is shaded, so we can say 2 out of 6 and 1 out of 3 are equivalent fractions. Now the way that we go about simplifying and the process of simplifying is writing a fraction with as smaller numbers as possible basically. So we want to write the fraction as a ratio of two numbers, so 1 to 3, or one fraction as 1/3, but you have to get it to the point where you can't reduce the numbers any smaller such that they remain whole numbers. So I'll give you an example numerically of how we do that. So if we have 2 on 6, which is on the left, we can write that as here, that is one lot of 2 squares, highlighted, and then on the bottom we've got one lot of 2 squares, 2 lots of 2, 3 lots of 2 squares on the bottom. We can then cancel the 2's to end up with 1/3, which is our simplified version. Now a very common question is, why can we cancel those 2's? The reason comes from the last lesson in multiplication. We can write this as, now in the multiplication lecture we didn't go this way, we went from right to left and then we multiplied those together to get 2 on 6. But we said that this thing and this thing are equal, and if they're equal we should be able to go back the other way, right? Because they're both equal. Now the purpose of doing this is writing it in this form makes it really obvious, because 2 divided by 2 is just 1. And anything multiplied by 1 is itself. So 1/3 times 1 is just 1/3. So simplifying this process, instead of writing out this step, we can just cancel the 2's out up here and we're left with 1/3. If we were to do that again with the bottom example here, we've got 6 squares this way, 6 that way, so we've got 6 by 6 is 36 in total. If we're looking at our shaded area, we have 4 by 6, which is 24. If we're looking at our bigger segments, we've got 3 of them, 2 of them are shaded. So we can say 24 out of 36 is the same or an equivalent fraction to 2 out of 3. If we are simplifying 24 on 36, we can see that each of these segments here has 12 in it. So for our shaded ones, we've got 2 lots of 12. For our total amount, we've got 3 lots of 12. We can cancel the 12's and we have 2/3, and we've got our simplified form. Now the real test to seeing if it's simplified is to look at, does 2 and 3 have any common factors? If they don't, then they're in their smallest possible whole number arrangement and they're simplified. Now when we're doing these questions, we very rarely get pictures to help us, we just have to do the numbers. So I'm going to show this process again with the numbers. If we are simplifying 2 on 6, we want to look at the factors of 2 and the factors of 6 and find which ones are common. So if I'm looking at factors of 2, we've got 1 and 2. Factors of 6, we've got 1 and 6, 2 and 3. Now the common ones to both lists, we've got 2. How we go about simplifying is we write our 2 on 6 as the multiplication of our factors, cancel the 2's, and we get 1 on 3. 1 and 3 don't have any common factors, so we're done. Has a common factor of 1, but 1 doesn't get us any further. If I times this by the 1's cancel and you end up with the same thing. Let's have a look at 24 on 36. So we are after factors of 24. Now, the way that I like to do this is to just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and get them all that way, and so I don't miss any. 5 by 5 is 25, not 24. It's not a factor. 6 is already written down, so we end up getting them all. If we are looking for 36, I'll quickly write these out. Okay, now looking at our common factors, we've got 2, 3, 4, and 6, 8, and 12 in both. So we've got 6 common factors. The easiest way to do this, or the quickest way to do it, is to pick the highest common factor. So we'll pick that first. I'll show you a different one a bit later. So if we write our 24 on 36, we're saying 12 is common to the numerator and the denominator. We've got 12 times 2 and 12 times 3. And we have our simplified version like we had just above. Now, if I didn't pick the highest common factor, if I just picked a regular common factor, let's try 6. We could write this, these cancel, and we get 4 on 6. There's nothing wrong with this. This is a simplified form of the 24 on 36. However, it's not fully simplified. You can see that the 4 on 6 can be written as 2 on 3. So what we have to do at this stage is we have to list the common factors of 4 and 6. Hopefully you can identify that 2 is a common factor. And we end up with our original one. Now, why did I show you that step? When we are simplifying fractions, ideally, we don't want to have to write out these lists because it's going to take forever to do these questions. And if you progress anywhere in maths, you're going to have to be able to do these questions quickly. So you want to get to a stage where you can do this in your head. If you can't, you really need to practice your times tables. So if I'm doing this in my head, I don't know about you, but I don't have 2 lists of numbers that I'm visually inspecting. My mind doesn't work like that. So it's possible for me not to pick the highest common factor. Let's say I thought the highest common factor was 6. That's perfectly okay. I'm doing the sum with 6's. The only thing I have to do is when I get a simplified form, I need to check if there's a common factor between the numerator and the denominator. If there is, then I need to simplify further. That second simplification is going to be a lot easier because these numbers are now a lot smaller than those numbers. If there isn't a common factor, then I'm done. So it's always really good to check after you've done it to make sure that there are no common factors. Make sure you've got the most simplified form. Okay, so that's the lesson on simplification. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you next time. This video forms a part of a worksheet series that aims to develop understanding of fraction arithmetic. So if you'd like to do the worksheets, visit the link in the description.